Welcome back, everybody, to Real Estate Junkies Coast to Coast. I'm your co-host, Rusty Ham, on the West Coast. Rick, you're on the East Coast. Welcome.
Thanks, Rusty. Great to be here, as always.
Yeah, you didn't start out with anything with weather. I'm surprised.
I figured if I did, you'd give me a hard time.
I am in the Southern California area, so those of you that are concerned, I'm about an hour and a half away from all the fires, so I am safe. But unfortunately, there are a lot of people that their houses have burned down, or the actual city has burned down. So I feel for them. I'm thinking, I think we're thinking of their families in these hard times. And the wind is going to pick up again, Rick, here today, tomorrow, and Wednesday. So hopefully we can knock those winds down or knock those fires down so no one else gets their house burned down. Crazy stuff.
It is.
So today we're again, the three pillars of our podcast is mindset, skill set, and systems. And we also have a game plan that we want to chat about later on. So today we're going to talk about systems, more specifically, kind of what we're focusing on in the community, which is KPIs, right? Rick, for those that are not familiar with KPIs, what does KPI stand for? Trick question.
Key performance indicators. Yeah, key performance indicators. That's how we track basically our business. When you're making dials, and let's say we know it's very predictable. So we know how many dials it takes to get a live call. We know how many live calls it takes to get leads, how many of them are usually passive, how many are active, how many are converted into appointments, and how many appointments to get it taken or property under contract, and then how many of those are sold. So if we don't track them, we don't know what any causes of why something's not happening. To give you an example would be we know roughly 15% of calls are live calls, the sellers that pick up. And all of a sudden, I went through a time where it dropped down to 5% consistently for about a month. And it turned out the VA's phone number was being flagged as spam. So it gives us an indication if you're not converting, why aren't you converting? We can find out why by tracking those KPIs.
Yeah, and there's other strategies too. I think we spoke to another associate. Her live calls were down. So we went through her numbers. Her conversion was good, but her lives were down, right? Meaning every time you make a dial, someone picks up. So like you said, there could be numerous reasons why. One could be likely spam, and when I don't see a number I don't recognize, I don't pick it up. So especially if it is likely spam, I'm not picking that up. But what we recognize in hers is what we did is instead of we get a list every day, right, or weekly, whatever that list, however many days you pull it up. And so what we said is, okay, cut your list in half and then redial those numbers that didn't pick up and see if that helps with your pickup rate. Of course, she went from like 8%, like you said, 8% up to like 16 or 17%, just by cutting her list in half and redialing those numbers that didn't pick up, right? Because sometimes if you dial it twice, then the person in the line is like, oh, okay, well, this person's trying to get a hold of me. I probably should answer it, right? And then there's other strategies where you make 3 dials. So let's say, Rick, I call you once, it goes to voicemail, I hang up right away, and I redial it right away. And then it gets to a voicemail again, and I hang up, and then I redial it again right away. And then if you don't answer, then I'll leave a message. So there's different strategies on try to get that live. Again, you can't make somebody pick up the phone, but typically it's around 15%, right? And then the conversion, I believe we're around the 35% conversion, because if someone does pick up, they're going to say no for various reasons. You have the wrong number. Go go fly a kite. So there's various reasons why that live would not be converted to a lead. And then describe what a lead is.
So a lead is anybody that doesn't tell you, do not call me, I am definitely not interested, anything like that. where it's a lead is somebody that at some point in the future you're at least going to follow up.
It's that simple. And people, they'll come in the community. We'll tell them that, but then they they get too analytic, meaning only if they send them an email, they consider that a lead. They're like describing what a lead is, and it's just when you come in the community, it's just anybody you're going to follow up with. If it's tomorrow, if it's next week, if it's 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now, like I have a task, Rick, in my which said, follow up in 2 years. And it's been 2 years. Right. So I'm going to follow up with this guy. Hey, remember me 2 years ago? He's going to say no. But yeah. So anybody you're going to follow up, you're going to consider that a lead.
Yeah, I mean, there's two distinctions on leads. You have passive leads, which are those that we're talking about now, and you have active leads. Those are the ones that you call and they say, "Yeah, I'm possibly open to that."
Yeah. Cause we're not trying to convert on call number one. And if you do convert on call number one, be very, very wary because you're not going to convert on call number one. So yeah, so we're looking for people that are just open to the idea. If they're open to the idea, then we're going to send them some information. We're going to set up a follow-up call. We might even set up an appointment right away if they're motivated enough. The passive one, again, it's going to be somebody who just relisted it with a realtor because we don't deal with realtors. It's somebody who maybe have just rented it out. So they have a lease, a year-long lease. Maybe they sold it, but it's pending. There's contingencies a lot of times on solds, and and we're running into a lot of fractured closings, meaning the eventual buyer, just doesn't qualify for whatever reason, or they're just not ready yet. They're just like, you know what, we're gonna, especially in the Northeast, right? Hey, we're gonna take it off the market until springtime, right? So those would be considered passive. What we do with them. Rick, describe kind of the form letters and the success rate on form letters. I'm not sure. I think success rate is very low if people call back, but describe what a
Yeah.
form letter is.
Well, a form letter is snail mail. We don't, and a lot of these people, like for instance, if somebody has a realtor, well, we're going to follow up with them at some point. But in the meantime, you send them a has realtor form letter. We have 10 different form letters, depending on whether the call was from your VA or from you. And you send them a has realtor form letter, and it's just professionally written. These have been really refined so they can generate more, a higher conversion rate. Typically, when you're wholesaling, you may be looking at 1%. I think ours is a little bit higher than that, but these are people we've talked to, so it's not completely cold mail, and we know what their situation is in advance, whether, for example, whether they have a realtor or whether they're under contract. We have a form letter for that. We have a form letter for someone who's not interested now, for somebody that just wants cash. So that's the one we send that through snail mail.
Yeah. And then and they respond. That's awesome. That means they're motivated, right? Usually those are the ones that are highly motivated, because that's what we're looking for. We're looking for motivated sellers that they need to sell for whatever reason. They need to get out of their situation. So going back to the KPIs, I always say to the students, if you're not tracking, you're not winning. That's why we ask them to keep track daily. And we use Slack. If you're not familiar with Slack, we communicate through Slack. They give us their daily accountability, number of dials, number of people they talk to, number of leads, what went well, what didn't go well, what was their win for the day. So if we do that daily, we also have a weekly tracking with them. And then we have our weekly calls with them where we go over their KPIs. So we're constantly looking at their numbers and making sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. Good stuff, Rick. Yeah, KPI is super important. I think in any business, not just real estate or what we're doing in terms. Let's transition to our game plan. Again, the 4 game plans are a lease purchase, owner financing. We buy subject to the existing mortgage. And then we call it an executive lease purchase or an AO. We call it an assign out. And let me just describe what an AO is. What we do is we agree on a price with the seller, a monthly with the seller, and we take it to market at a premium. We find a tenant buyer. We charge them a non-refundable down payment. We charge them rent They're also responsible for taxes, insurance, anything that's as a buyer would be responsible for, they are responsible. Once we find that qualified tenant buyer, we assign that tenant buyer back to the seller. The seller gets a portion of that down payment. They get, if there is cash flow, they get the cash flow. They also get the benefits of principal pay down, and also they can use it as a rental property, right? They get the depreciation, and then they're going to get the appreciation through that premium that we sell it at. So using that kind of guideline, Rick, describe the benefits. I almost did describe the benefits of an AO, but why would a seller do an AO?
A good
Who's
example.
our avatar? Who's our avatar as far as an AO?
So it's somebody who has a, well, not all cases, but in a lot of cases, it's somebody who says, if we ask them, well, what are you going to do if it doesn't sell? If you don't get the price you want, time you want? Well, I may just rent it. The AO flag should go right up. And my response to that is, oh, before you do that, let me know, because there's a much better option. And that's what I will describe an AO to them. And it's basically you can get your full asking price, possibly more. You can get monthly cash flow without the landlord headaches of maintenance and repair or anything like that. And you get principal pay down if there's a mortgage. Yeah, if there's a mortgage.
Yeah, we are looking for sellers that possibly have been landlords before, so they're familiar with having renters. Again, these aren't renters; these are buyers, and so Rick alluded to it. You're not going to have the headaches of a landlord because these are buyers. They're putting significant amount of money down, and it's non-refundable. So if they act like renters and they screw up, meaning if they don't make a payment, if they're late, whatever reason, we have stipulations in the contract that they are going to lose their option and they're going to lose their down payment. So these are buyers that have skin in the game. They're going to buy it eventually, so there's no reason for them to trash their own place. If that makes sense. And then we have a very high success rate, meaning the tenant buyers that we put in the houses eventually will get a loan and cash either us out or seller out, depending on if it's an A or not.
Right. It's going to work just like a regular lease purchase, except we're assigning that agreement to the seller.
Yeah. We don't make as much, right? We take a portion of that down payment as kind of like our our hard work to find this tenant buyer. We share that down payment. Typically, it's 3 to 10% of the purchase price, and again, that purchase price is at a premium. We're selling it at a future price. So hypothetically, Rick, you and I, let's say the market price, the fair market value today is 500. We'll probably take it to market at 550, right? And we get at from 3 to 10% of that 350, usually up front or over time, right? It's not necessarily all up front. Sometimes we might get, let's say, 5% today, and then eventually we get to that 10% within that time frame. How long, Rick, do we typically cash out on an AO or an executive lease purchase?
Well, the lease term is going to be the same as it would for a regular typical lease purchase with a buyer, and that's going to be
24 months. So we do have a third party company that we run all of our future tenant buyers through. They pay, I think it's a $50 fee. We have to cut this out, Lace. We'll have to cut that out.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll have to cut that out. So we find a third party company is going to sift through these tenant buyers. It's like a $50 fee, and they do a background check, credit, criminal, all that kind of stuff for us. And then generally we try to get 2 to 3 tenant buyers that are interested, and then what we do is we wrap them up in a bow and we hand it over to the seller and say, okay, who would you prefer? Right? We'll give them our opinion, right, Rick? And we'll say, hey, this person has a pretty large down payment, but they may not make a whole lot monthly. Or these people have a lower down payment, but they make they're pretty secure in their monthly cash flow. Hey, you make the choice. So we give the seller the option of who they're gonna. Now we're gonna give them our recommendation, obviously, but the seller has last fruit.
Right. And the other thing is with the AO is when the seller says, well, when we talk to them about how long the term they'd be comfortable going out, and we tell them, some people go 20 plus years for tax or estate planning reasons, some go 10, some go much less. And if they come right back and say, well, how about a year? Or how about 6 months? Well, obviously, you're not going to get a long term deal with them. And then you can say, well, the shortest time, which would be the most profitable for you, would be a 24-month time frame. And that's when you pivot to.
Yeah. So the different reasons why we pivot. We pivot because, like you said earlier, they've been a landlord before, so that our AO antennas go up. They want a shorter term. Maybe they want money up front, like a down payment. Because when we do terms, we try not to put money down. It doesn't happen all the time, but if they want money down, then we're like, okay, well, we normally don't put money down, but here's an option where you do get some money up front, and then we assign that buyer to them so they get their money up front. Blah blah blah. There's also maybe the cash flow for us doesn't make sense, right? It could be a negative cash flow, or in my, because I'm not sure about your price point, but I'm in a very high price point area. Anything above $1 million, the AO antennas go up. I don't necessarily want to be dealing with a really high monthly payment in case something really bad goes wrong. So what I'll say is, hey, I'll find this buyer and then you deal with it. And it's a high payday for me, right? We're going to get at least 10% on these $1 million homes. So that's a big payday for me. Speaking of AOs, we're both kind of working on one now currently, right? So describe your AO. I think it's above 2.0.
It's 2.2.
2.2 million. Describe the conversation, and it sounds like one of those pivots might be what we described. So describe the conversation of this seller.
So this seller, his grandfather passed away. His grandfather built the house. It was his house, but this seller lives there. He has another home also right down the street, and he has some relatives that need to be paid off. Some of the equity goes to them. I don't recall exactly what the mortgage. I think it was about around $1 million for the mortgage remaining. So he needed some cash up front, and he was talking. I think it was $200,000 or $300,000. So the only way he's going to get that is possibly if we do an AO. And when I went through and talked to him about an AO, he got really excited about it, and he said, that fits perfectly. And even if I had to wait to 2 years, I could get everything paid off. So it was a shorter term for him. So everything seemed to fit for him. So that's
awesome. Yeah, I mean, again, we don't make as much, right? If we're in the middle and we get longer terms, as investors, we make more, right? We get the 3 payday system. We get our payday 1, which is the down payment. We get a payday 2, which is our cash flow, and then our payday 3, which is a combination of the principal pay down and the premium that we sell it on the back end. On an AO, we only get that payday 1, and we only get a portion of it.
well,
So we don't make as much. What's that?
it's like you mentioned the payday 1 on that price range, $2.2 million. You're looking at $100,000 to $150,000 payday.
Yeah, boo hoo hoo, right? So yeah, we don't make as much. If you stay in the middle, right, it's obviously going to be a gigantic deal, but I'll take $100,000 and assign a buyer to this guy. Similar to mine, I spoke to a guy. He's, I think he had on the market at 1.8. I used 2 million as a hypothetical. I said, hey, and he's like, well, tell me what you got, and he's an investor. It's an empty house. It was a rental for him. It's empty now, so he doesn't need his money right away. He's been a landlord. He wants a shorter term. He wanted money up front. So it was this perfect situation, right? It's just, again, these are the sellers that we're looking for, and this is for everybody who's listening. We're looking for sellers that want to maximize all the money that's in the house, all the equity. They don't want to give it away to realtors. They don't want to give it away to fees, taxes. There's tax purposes. They don't want to give it away to the Fed, to Uncle Sam. So they're very protective of the equity that they have because they've done things in their lives to capture that equity, which is, maybe they paid it down, maybe they bought it free and clear, whatever the reason is, they want to protect that equity. However, the sellers that we buy from, they don't need it. It's not like it's super important where they need this money in order to purchase something else. Right. This is like a second home for people. It's an inheritance, like you just talked about. It's a house that was handed down. They don't want to be landlords, but they'll take monthly payments because it's free and clear or whatever the situation is. So, an AO makes sense because either they've been a landlord before, they want a shorter term, they want money up front. So all these benefits. What I ran into today when I was critiquing a call, Rick, was the seller that he's afraid that if we lock in a price today and his house appreciates over time, right? And my thought is, okay, we're selling it at a premium anyway, and that premium is going to catch up to the price it's going to be in 2 years anyway. This guy is thinking that it's going to appreciate 20%. He thinks it's just going to jump up tremendously. And we tell sellers all the time, right, Rick? We don't have a crystal ball. Like, what if it goes down? That's kind of our counter to people like, well, what if my house goes up? Our counter to that is, what if it goes down, right?
Right. You just don't know. I mean, if you look at like LA, if you're anywhere near those fires, your prices are going to go down. However, if you're outside of that, your prices are probably going to go up tremendously.
Yeah, it's almost like the hurricanes in Florida, right? I mean, those houses were destroyed by the hurricane. Same situation. We have a few associates that are in Florida, and I don't want to say they're benefiting. I would hate to say benefiting from
Yeah.
these tragedies because these people have been displaced, and there's personal items in their houses that have been destroyed, and but they need to sell, right? They either need to sell the land that they owned that has no house on it or whatever, and we can do it through terms. Again, doesn't seem like they need their money right away. We can come in and we can help them. We can pay them what they want, and secure their equity, and then have them move on with their lives, whatever they need to do with that. Awesome stuff. Rick, anything you want to add as far as an AO, the benefits of it?
No, that's pretty much, I mean, to me, an AO, if a seller has a couple of years, an AO is a no brainer. It really is, because that's the most that they're going to get return on their property. And however, I will caveat that and say, you don't want to automatically jump too soon to an AO because
Yeah.
on
So
a
if
flip,
you join hypothetically, let's say you're enjoying our content and you're like, hey, I want to be part of that community. Obviously, there's a link in the show notes that will direct you to either our QLS Quantum Leap system, where you can learn about this on your own. You can also set up a strategy call with one of the coaches. But yeah, what we tell our students is that should be the last resort. So you're going to lead in with lease purchase or owner financing because we want you as investors to make as much money as you can. And if you do an AO, you're leaving payday 2 and payday 3 on the table, and then you're only getting a portion of payday 1. So with a lease purchase owner financing sub 2, you're getting the benefits of all 3 paydays. You're getting payday 1, payday 2, and payday 3. So you make more as an investor in those 3 game plans. The AO game plan is the last resort. It's, hey, it doesn't sound like these other ones are a good fit. I have this other one. I have another idea. And then you introduce that and you pivot to that. Right. Cool. Good stuff, Rick. I appreciate you coming on again. Coming on again. We're co-hosts, so I don't know what I'm talking about. Good stuff. Yeah. If you guys, if you're listening and you want to explore what we're doing in our community, the Wicked Smart community, again, go to the show notes and click on either the QOS Quantum Leap System home study course, or you can set up a strategy call and we'll chat with you and see if this would be a good fit for you. All right, Rick.
great.
We'll see you next week, buddy.
Looking forward to it already.
Catch everybody on the other side. Take care, everybody.
Take care.